Welcome to the Quotive Corner. However this moment finds you, maybe you're beginning your day with a quiet cup of coffee, pushing through the middle of a busy schedule, or winding things down tonight. I'm glad you've made room for a few minutes of reflection. Today's quote is uncomfortable in a way that good observations often are, because it exposes something about human behavior we don't particularly enjoy admitting. Love, friendship, and respect do not unite people as much as a common hatred for something. That line comes from Anton Chekhov, the Russian playwright and master of the short story. Chekhov had a remarkable ability to observe human behavior without romanticizing it. His characters were rarely heroes or villains in the traditional sense. They were simply human, flawed, complicated, and often driven by impulses they barely understood themselves. This quote reflects that same clarity. At first glance, it sounds almost cynical. We like to believe that communities are built primarily on positive bonds: affection, loyalty, admiration. And certainly those things matter. Love creates families. Friendship creates companionship. Respect creates cooperation. But Chekhov noticed something else. Negative bonds often mobilize people faster. Think about how quickly groups form around shared opposition. A common enemy, a disliked idea, a rival organization, a political adversary. These things can unite individuals almost instantly. You don't need deep understanding or emotional intimacy to rally around something you collectively reject. Hatred simplifies. It removes nuance. It creates a clear boundary: us versus them. And that clarity can be powerful. We've touched on this idea indirectly before here at the Quotive Corner. When we reflected on persuasion and prejudice, we saw how quickly people can be mobilized by appeals to emotion rather than careful reasoning. Chekhov is pointing to a similar phenomenon: emotional alignment built through shared hostility. The mechanism is surprisingly efficient. When people share love, they must build trust over time. Friendship develops gradually. Respect grows through experience and observation. But hatred requires less patience. All you need is agreement about what should be rejected. That doesn't mean hatred is stronger than love in the long run. It means it can be more immediately binding. And that distinction matters. History provides many examples of movements, factions, and even nations that coalesced around shared resentment. Sometimes those movements accomplished meaningful change. Other times they simply replaced one conflict with another. Hatred can unify, but it rarely sustains. Why? Because negative unity depends on the continued presence of the target. If the enemy disappears, the bond weakens. Groups formed primarily around opposition often struggle to define themselves once the opposition fades. Love and friendship operate differently. They are constructive forces. They require investment. They build something positive rather than simply resisting something negative. But because they require effort, they often develop more slowly. That's the paradox Chekhov noticed. Human beings sometimes find it easier to agree on what they dislike than on what they value. You can see this pattern in everyday life as well. Workplace conversations can quickly become animated when employees share frustration about a policy or manager. Online communities can grow rapidly around criticism of an idea or institution. Agreement through grievance is quick. Agreement through vision takes work. Now, this observation isn't meant to make us cynical about human nature. Chekhov wasn't advocating hatred as a strategy. He was simply describing something he saw repeatedly in human relationships. And awareness of that tendency gives us a choice. If you understand that shared hostility can unite people quickly, you can also recognize when that unity is fragile. It's easy to bond with someone over a complaint. It's harder, but ultimately more meaningful, to build connection through shared values, shared goals, and shared effort. Hatred creates a crowd. Respect creates a community. And there's an important difference between the two. Crowds gather quickly, but they disperse just as fast when circumstances change. Communities take longer to form, but they endure because they are built on something constructive. So here's something worth reflecting on. Think about the groups or relationships you're part of. What is the glue holding them together? Is it shared resentment? Shared criticism? Shared frustration? Or is it something more durable? Shared purpose? Mutual respect? Genuine care? Because the foundation matters. If the bond depends on what you collectively oppose, it will always require a new enemy to remain intact. But if the bond depends on what you collectively value, it can continue to grow even when challenges fade. Chekhov's observation reminds us that unity alone is not enough. The source of that unity matters. It's easy to unite against something. The real work is learning how to unite for something. Thanks for spending a few minutes here at the Quotive Corner. If this reflection made you reconsider how groups form and what truly sustains them, consider sharing it with someone who enjoys thoughtful conversation. And remember, wisdom isn't in the quote, it's in the reflection. Until we reflect again at the corner,